What's the state of your website? If you're looking for a new digital experience platform, or DXP, to run your digital experiences, I have the book for you. The Agile Brand Guide to Digital Experience Platforms is part of my best-selling series of MarTech books. In this book, I explore and demystify DXPs and look at the roles a digital experience platform should play, the different types on the market, as well as how to initially evaluate platforms, then how to best implement a DXP once you've selected it. The book also features a foreword from Rupali Jain, Chief Product Officer at leading DXP provider Optimizely, as well as several other thought leaders in the industry. Learn more and get a copy in print or digital now by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com.
Hi, this is Greg Kihlstrom. Welcome to the Agile World podcast, where we discuss customer experience, employee experience, and transformation in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, a blueprint for creating an experience-led organization, now available on Amazon and other retailers.
My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how enterprises who remain agile can achieve great success in building great experiences for their customers. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Aileen Cahil, an author, speaker, and customer experience expert who has worked with several Fortune 100 companies and gotten great customer experience, digital transformation, and marketing results through a data-driven, customer-centric, and agile approach. First, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background?
Thanks, Greg. Back in the day, I got my degree in applied behavioral analytics. So I was a complete quant nerd. But now with big data and all of the digital insights that we have, I'm on the precipice of being cool. So I help companies grow by focusing on their customers. And I know that sounds intuitive and a bit like a no-brainer, but many times companies focus on themselves, their products, and their processes, and think that they know their customers when in fact that's not the case.
Well, Aileen, you were kind enough to share a PowerPoint that I'm going to have available for download on my website after this episode airs, called The Keys to Agile Customer Experience. So we'll be talking through some ideas that are shared in there as well for future reference. So let's start by talking about the importance of customer experience. First, I'd love to hear what your definition of good CX is.
Well, customer experience is the sum of all the interactions consumer, if it's B2C, or customer, if it's B2B, have with you, your brand, and all of your communication. So your website, your emails, retail experiences, phone calls, all of that. And, brand is now an artifact of customer experience. Back in the day, we used to do these big brand building campaigns. Well, really now brand is a reflection of the customer experience.
Yeah. So how do you recommend that an organization measures that then, measures customer experience?
Well, far too often, you can't measure the entire customer experience, right? And so it's important to first identify what's most important to the customers, right? We call these moments of truth. And that's where you want to start measuring, where it matters most, or moments that matter is also what it's called. Start by measuring those interactions. And also identify where there might be friction and where there might be customer frustration, and try and improve and measure those. And that's where you can really make a difference.
Great. Yeah. So you mentioned, friction on the customer side, but what about, friction on the inside? So, roadblocks within an organization. What do you think? It seems to me like most organizations understand that they need to provide great customer experience. So that's it's well documented and researched and so on and so forth. But Yet so many organizations are not doing it well, and they don't have processes in place to not only adequately measure, I would say, but also to improve it. What do you think are the biggest roadblocks to an organization doing customer experience well?
Well, that's a big fat question. Really, part of the challenge is the historical functional silos, right? So, customer experience is really impacted by every function in the organization. So, having it be everyone's job is the psychological principle of diffusion of accountability. If it's everyone's job, then it's no one's job. So really trying to break down the internal functional silos, and so that there's this big push. I'm all about data, right? And customer data is different than company and sales data. Customer data is about what's important to them, what are their needs, what are their attitudes, not just what were their transactions, but what's their customer lifetime value, right? So I know Forrester has written a lot about the chief marketing officer and the chief information officer needing to be joined at the hip, and rather than be in the turf battle, that they need to be collaborating. Some folks just were writing that there's a huge resurgence of chief customer officers coming online, and that they are often reporting to the CEO in recognition that it's not a functionally siloed endeavor, and it's really a transformational trip that involves the entire organization to deliver good CX.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's my latest book, Center of Experience. I talk a lot about that idea of the traditional organization. It's not about restructuring the organization. It's about looking at how do we identify and address both customer and employee experience without having to restructure. Because if you make a customer experience department, for instance, that's great. They may be able to oversee some processes and policies and things like that. But to what you were saying earlier, customer experience is everybody's job, even if you feel like you're mostly inward facing and stuff like that. So totally agree that it requires a new way of thinking in an organization. And that kind of brings us to the next topic, and certainly one that an important one to this show, Agile. So what do you see? You've done a lot of work in Agile marketing and applying Agile in business. What role does Agile play in the type of transformation that these organizations need in order to do customer experience well?
Well, 5 years ago, when I started talking about Agile marketing on social media platforms, I had people telling me that Agile was for software and IT only and couldn't be applied to other business functions. So I'm glad we've matured since then and realized that it's a great approach. So really, I mean, Agile has so much going for it, okay? And I'm a big believer, but what needs to fuel the Agile methodology is deep customer insights, right? So starting with the kind of design thinking principles of really knowing your customers. And that's not just from a research perspective, but really like living and breathing your customers. That's why I sometimes call myself a customer evangelist, right?
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit in preparation for this conversation about how Toyota engineers went and lived with their drivers of the minivan, and they re-engineered their minivans to better fit families with small children here in the United States. We then also talked about let's just call it my German car, that has no idea how people in the United States use their cars. I don't have enough cup holders. The cup holders aren't big enough. The armrest doesn't do the duty that it needs to. And everybody I know who has these German cars says they drive great, but there's really some serious shortcomings. So why don't they send their engineers here and help us understand that?
Yeah. So in your work, how have you used Agile to successfully help brands?
Yeah, great question. So, starting with those deep customer insights, we then look at, and these are terms that others have used. What are the jobs to be done, right? What is it your customers are trying to accomplish when they call your call center, when they go to your website, when they go to your retail location? Where are you maybe inadvertently inflicting pain on those customers? And then that becomes the kind of the defining moment of what design sprints do you want to run, right? The Google Labs popularized this notion of design sprints, but for those of us who have been around since before Google, it's a mashup of a lot of proven research, brainstorming, ideation techniques and research techniques that work, and they mashed it up so you start with a problem you're trying to solve on day one, and in an ideal world by day 5 you have a working prototype. And that's really a cross-functional team, and that's one of the beauties of these design sprints and the Agile methodology is a cross-functional team. The more diverse the thinking in the room is, the better your outcomes are going to be. And that's proven time and time again from the boardroom to these design sprints.
You mentioned, Agile started in manufacturing software in, very different areas than marketing and HR and other things like that. Where do you see the biggest potential for its use that maybe is not getting enough attention right now?
Yeah, so and I'll speak to marketing since that's my functional strong suit. But marketing in the past, and it has been historically practiced, has been more of a kind of set it and forget it type of function. Let's do the plan. Let's buy the media, upfront media buys. Here's the campaigns for the entire year, and that is not as nimble as we need to be in this day and age. So really rethinking about what is the fast cycle framework for test, measure, and learn. How do you collect and integrate the data? Then really do that deep analysis and discover opportunities. It's with that analysis that you discover, oh my gosh, there's this big, white space opportunity, or there's this blue ocean strategy. And then you act and you optimize. And the whole idea of iteration and continual improvement and refinement is something that I think is relatively new for marketing for sure. And certainly something that we can benefit from.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where great customer experience starts from. So, it's often said that great CX starts with great employee experience. Happy employees make happy customers. How do you recommend organizations work to enable employees to deliver great customer experience, since they're so key to the process? Where does that start in the organization?
Well, you're spot on. Great customer experience is predicated upon great employee experience, and that has been proven time and time again. But it's really got to start at the top, Greg. So customer experience is a C-suite endeavor because it is so all-encompassing across the organization. And so I have found that although the senior executives understand the business and the business model, they've been in far too many meetings to remember really what the customer is going through, and helping those executives viscerally understand the customer's experience is important. And this is not a PowerPoint, okay? Viscerally understand does not mean a PowerPoint of a customer journey map. It means getting out of your office, going to your stores, mystery shopping your competitors, going to the call center, and not just listening to calls at your desk, sit next to the customer service representatives and see what the interoperability of their systems are. In many cases, they've got these legacy systems. They're rekeying in data. They're jumping through hoops. They're jotting things down on Post-it notes, be they, physical or digital Post-it notes. I mean, some of these CSRs need a superhero cape based on the hoops that their own organizations are having them jump through.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you mentioned people think of Agile as, because it had origins in software and things like that, as a very technical thing. And yet you mention a very human side of this and the human-centered part of it, which is really understanding, taking the time to, whether it's what you're saying, like shadowing individuals or journey mapping or all of these types of things that are, while they may have results that are very highly technical, they're very human. They start at the human level. So I think that's such it's almost a coming full circle kind of thing, but it's so needed in this day and age. Do you see that as a way to help break down silos as well?
Absolutely. So let me just, design thinking is near and dear to my heart because it starts with the customer, right? And
yeah.
And, IDEO and Frog Design have repopularized it. Thank goodness. I love them for that. But it's not new. It's been around since the 60s, right? But I'll just give you an example of how that, starting with the humanistic, human-centered design element, helped an aha moment with the C-suite. I was recently working with an insurance company, and super great people, super nice people, really ethical, wanting to do the right things, right? And we brought a call to a meeting where there was a person, a little old lady who was basically being evicted because she couldn't afford her rent payment. And her voice was quavering. She was on the verge of, melting down, the poor lady. And the call center person would have gotten an A+ for their efficiency, and they're following the script, but they showed no empathy. The script was really spewing jargon at this poor little old lady. I mean, I welled up and cried. It was so sad.
Wow. Yeah. And that's really where you have to put people in the, it's about empathy, right? as you were saying. It's really, you have to put people in someone else's shoes to understand really what they're going through and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, and with call centers, especially because they are a very, predominant customer touch point, think about effectiveness metrics, not just efficiency metrics. Average call handle time, okay, I get it, that's important. But really effectiveness metrics of, how did it feel from the recipient's standpoint? Did we solve what their job to be done? Did we solve their problem? First call resolution, and balancing those effectiveness metrics with those efficiency metrics.
Yeah, agreed. One other thing, just in the PowerPoint that you've provided that will be available for download, you talk about whole brain marketing, and so I'd love for you to just touch on that a little bit here. And there's a left brain, right brain, the art and science of marketing. Really, could you talk a little bit about that and describe it?
So this is my personal soapbox, so I'll try to keep it brief.
Go ahead.
So, the science of marketing has reemerged. It's actually always been there, right? So when I started in marketing, I thought it had to do with the customer. And when I started in big CPG marketing, it was really the big idea and creative driven and brand building. And I worked with super smart people. And we started doing some of the science of marketing. And that's where we had breakthrough results in terms of, before big data, we cobbled together Joseph's Technicolor raincoat to identify heavy users of our competitors' products. We measured our results in terms of the switching campaign we had. And we were really scrappy in how we did it. Now it's easier. And I actually wrote a white paper for Shopper Expo a few years ago, beseeching marketers to do whole brain marketing and use your corpus callosum, which is the connector between the left and the right brain, because that helps you be customer centric. It helps you understand what's good for the customer and what's good for the company, so it's really mutually beneficial. We've heard a lot about personalization and data driving personalization. This is the perfect example of how the data insights help you inform what's the content that's relevant to this customer or consumer. Where are they in their relationship with us? And what are their interests, right? So that you can be contextually aware and engaging.
Yeah, that's great. And that's really, I love that it ties back. Not only it's got to be worth it to the brand, obviously they have to be effective in what they're doing, but doing that better makes it more effective for the customer as well. And so, I like a win-win situation. So it's definitely that sounds like a great approach. And
Absolutely.
as I said, that'll be available for people to look at.
It's really about listening to your customers. So there's this whole concept of asking them one question, maybe every time, one that you can act on. We call it drip irrigation, so that you can get smarter about how to serve them. So with predictive modeling and the data science, if I know the answer to one question, I can interpolate 7 other answers, right? Because that's how the statistics work. So just asking that one question makes you so much smarter about how you might want to interact. And we call that a golden question. And I can give you a brief example if you're interested.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So we were working with Hart's Mountain, the pet toy company and the flea collar company. And so we had to figure out this one golden question that we could tell a lot about a customer. And the question was, do you buy your pet a holiday present or a birthday present? And if they answered no, then they probably weren't going to buy a lot of plush toys for Fido or Fluffy, right?
Right.
But if they answered yes, they were probably a key target for humanizing the pet. The pet is a family member type of household where they're going to be buying plush toys, they're going to be buying treats, maybe even as far as, sweaters.
Right.
So one other thing, Greg, and I don't know if you want to touch on this, but a lot of folks say, okay, what you just said makes sense, but seems a little overwhelming. You can't eat an elephant holistically. Where do you take the first bite? So, the Pareto principle, where 20% of your customers make up 80% of your profits. Pareto was a genius, right? So start with those most valuable customers and then figure out what drives value for them. What are they trying to do? What are the deep customer insights that you have about those most valuable customers? And then you can use all sorts of math to build lookalike models and, reverse append data and be brilliant. But really, start by picket fencing those most valuable customers and really understanding and re-engineering that experience. And then everything else will follow.
That's great. Yeah, totally agree. Wonderful. Well, one last thing before we wrap up here. For those interested in learning more about how to apply more agile processes to their work, agile marketing, so on and so forth, where would you recommend they start?
Well, I already declared I was a nerd, so I like to read a lot. And so keep reading. And I got my Agile certification from an organization called IC Agile. And they actually have a special Agile training for people who are business people as opposed to software people or manufacturing people. And it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think I got the same one actually. From IC Agile. So yeah, no, that's definitely agree. Well, Aileen, thanks so much for joining the show. And for those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
They can follow me on Twitter at Aileen Cahil. And I have a pretty big LinkedIn presence as well.
Great. Well, thanks again, Aileen Cahil, for joining the show.
Yeah, and in the presentation, I left my email in there. So feel free to reach out and ping me if you have any specific questions.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we'll have a link to the PowerPoint on the page for the episode. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. This has been terrific. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much. To learn more about both customer and employee experience, I recommend you go to my website at gregkillstrom.com and make sure to check out my latest book, The Center of Experience. More information is available on my website or wherever the book is available, like Amazon. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Killstrom. See you next week.
Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Killstrom. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, from my website at theagile.world or on Amazon or other retailers. Until next week, stay agile.